Okay. Okay. So I'm gonna tell you guys a little bit about myself. This isn't me in the GIF. But I do like skateboarding. And in general, I think that I do like things that can be described as fast and loose, like skateboarding. Here's another GIF of something that I like, which is tubing. Okay, so the theme between both these GIFs is that something really bad could have happened, or somewhat bad, and it didn't, right? These things are fast and loose. And I actually think this GIF right here is a very good metaphor for JavaScript. You're kind of like going along, and maybe it doesn't work out for your buddy in the other desk, but it worked out for you. And I like that, right? So this talk is called In Defense of Fast and Loose, JavaScript versus TypeScript. So in addition to liking skateboarding and tubing, I've been a developer for about a little over 3 years now, and I actually started right here at MX as an intern on their front-end team. And then I worked at Jane, which is on the 3rd floor of the same building, also doing front-end. And then since July, I've been at this company called Every, and they make payroll software. It's a small startup in downtown Salt Lake. And for most of my career, I've been a front-end developer. Only recently, I've been getting into back-end. We use Java at Every, and I've been learning Java. And for also most of my career, I've been doing React and JavaScript. And then at Jane, when I worked at Jane, we started using Flow. Who knows what Flow is? The Flow people might not like it described this way, but it's kind of like Facebook's version of TypeScript. So we started using Flow, and then we actually started switching over to TypeScript at Jane. And then when I got this new job, we were also using TypeScript. And I've been at this job for like a few months now. And I noticed that something was happening to me, which was, I was estimating how long work would take me on the front end, and it was taking me longer. And in my mind, I was blaming TypeScript. I was like, I could do this way faster if I could just do what I'm used to. And I think that's true. I could probably get it done faster. But then I was kind of like, I haven't actually been using TypeScript that long. I don't really know what I'm doing. So I kind of took to the internet to get a pulse to see how the internet feels and how people feel about TypeScript. Before I go further, I just want to say that I got a seal of approval from Alex Porter on this talk. He's sitting right here, right there in the pink shirt. So there's that. And when I got that message from him, I was like, dang, I don't want this talk to just be like a rant about how I don't like TypeScript, because that's not the case. But I did look up famous rants, but I didn't really find any that were like that cool. So all you get is the image of this Google search there. So what am I going to try to do here? If it's not a rant, what is it? Good question. I want to help make you learn some of the drawbacks and benefits of choosing TypeScript or JavaScript, and explore if we can even measure which is better, right? And then I will use a picture of Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson to pose a deep existential question about programming and life. Okay, let me get out of this presentation and let's take an internet pulse here. So this first thing I'm going to show you guys is something that I think it was some developers or product people or something, one second. They put out this state of JavaScript in 2018 study, and they surveyed 20,000 people, which, as they'll admit in their survey, that's not a lot of people. The JavaScript community is way bigger, but it is something, right? And so let's take a look at some of this. I'm going to scroll up for a second. So check this out. In 2018, only 5.4% of people have used TypeScript and would not use it again. Okay, so that means people who have used it are liking it, right? They would use it again, right? Just for a comparison, the React number of people who have used it and would not use it again is higher than that, which was surprising to me. It's not much higher. Both of the numbers are like below 10. And I think that's good that both numbers are low, right? That means the ecosystem is like pretty healthy, or people are at least somewhat liking the tools that they're using. That's good. Look at these other numbers. 46% of people have used it and would use it again, and then a lot of other people are interested in it. Okay, I'm gonna come back to this part. The most loved, this is Stack Overflow's survey of 2019. Sorry about that static. And you can see TypeScript is in the most loved. I actually don't know how they came up with most loved, but I'm sure they surveyed a lot of people and had some sort of method to it. So that's pretty significant, right? Most loved. Okay, now let's get some, that was like quantitative data, let's get some qualitative data via Twitter. Okay, so here's someone who really liked it. One of the best front-end decisions we've made. One of the best front-end decisions we've made. And he finished a 5-hour-long refactor and it didn't open his browser once. Pretty nuts. Okay, this felt validating to me because I was kind of like, man, I haven't been using TypeScript that long. But then I saw this tweet and I was like, well, he has, or longer than me. And so I felt validated that he feels the pain of this, right? And then what else do we have? That's just my feed. Okay, I think this is great. I think this is great. These two kids slamming each other with this automatic trash can, right? And I think this is also a very good metaphor for TypeScript. Like, yeah, it hurts a little bit, but it's also fun or satisfying in some way that we don't know, but those kids definitely know. Okay, so that's a little pulse of the internet. Let's see, I think that's all I want to show for this. This is just that slide I already showed you guys. And then, okay, sorry, I wanted to go back to this page. So what do people like so much about it, or dislike about it? It's a good question, and robust, less error-prone code was the top thing that people liked about it. And elegant programming style and patterns was the number 2 thing that people liked about it. But the interesting thing about this data is if you scroll down to the most disliked thing, clumsy programming style was the first most disliked. So people either think it's clumsy or it's elegant, right? And you'll notice that with a lot of these. Like there's kind of like the inverse is up there too. So there's a lot of reasons people like it and there's a lot of reasons people dislike it. So I kind of looked at this and I was kind of like, it's not extremely helpful, right? And before we go any further, let's look at the top one here. Robust, less error-prone code, right? Why do people think that it is, or why is that the most liked feature? And the reason is, I'm gonna describe a situation that probably a lot of you have been in, okay? Let's say you're a user, you've got a front end, and your user is typing into an input box. And you're gonna use their value and try and do some math, maybe add to some value you have in your state or whatever. And they type in a 3, send it, and the result is 103, right? But they only have $10 in their bank account, right? Well, it's because 10 was a number, and 3 was a string, and you forgot to make your input a number type, and your function is JavaScript, and so it just does it, right? That's the type of bug, I mean, that's a simple example, but I know it's relatable. That's the type of bug that TypeScript will catch. And when I say catch, I mean that depending on how you have it configured, your code is not even going to compile if you have that sort of stuff in there, right? Because your function, you'll have to define, hey, this function is only going to take a number, or whatever. And I use the word compiled, right? Well, JavaScript is interpreted. So TypeScript is compiled, but it's compiled down to JavaScript, right? So one thing that people really like about static typed compiled languages is that they can be more performant, right? And there are some technical reasons for this, but basically they're compiled down to performant code, and the typing helps with some like machine optimizations. I don't understand all the ins and outs of it. But with TypeScript to JavaScript, that's not the case, right? Because it's just compiling down to JavaScript. So you're not getting a runtime performance boost by writing TypeScript. And no one is really claiming that you are, but I just wanted to point that out, that that is one thing about other static typed compiled languages people really like. One thing that people do really like is that the IDE support is better with TypeScript. Who's used VS Code and TypeScript? It's pretty nice, right? I have a lot of pride, so I'm still on like Vim and TypeScript, but I'll like pair with my buddies or whatever, and I'll be like, oh dang, this is nice. Like I should switch, but it's pride. So that is really nice. And let's look at this. Let's think about this last one. So TypeScript provides optional static typing to JavaScript. This is one of the big things with TypeScript is like its effectiveness can really be dependent on how it's implemented, and that can be said of pretty much any programming language, right? But especially with TypeScript, because you can configure it in different ways, even just from like a compiling perspective. Like you can enable strict null checking or not, right? And it's going to be a vastly different developer experience. Or you can do stuff like this, which is a screenshot from some of my code that has not been merged in, but it is in my local branch, right? And this is pretty much, it's pretty much eliminating the point, right? I mean, would you guys agree with that? This is not very helpful from like a typing perspective. Yeah, because I'm basically saying, look, yeah, this data prop is going to be an array, but it could be an array of anything, and I'm too lazy to go in there and tell it what it's an array of. And so that's the thing, like it's only as good as you make it, right? It's only going to catch those sort of type bugs if you are judicious about the way you type your code. So let's see, what do we have? Okay, now we're going to get deep. Okay, this is Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. This is a monkey on his shoulder, and this is me. Okay. And I want everyone to raise your hand. You can't vote for the monkey, sorry. You have to say, who's a better human? Dwayne, The Rock Johnson, or me? Okay, I'm not actually gonna make you do that. But it's a weird question, right? Like, how can you measure that? If you're like, hey, who's stronger at like lifting weights? Probably Dwayne, The Rock Johnson, right? Who's better at programming? Oh, I don't know if he's any good, but maybe me, right? Who's a better actor? Definitely me. So it's a weird question, right? Like, who is a better human being or whatever? There's just so many variables, and it really depends on what your needs are, or what you're looking for. If you are looking for someone who's an actor or a programmer, who can lift weights, or who can teach, or can be a firefighter, like whatever, right? It's like super dependent on that. And I think the same goes for choosing a programming language. And I think that this is evidenced by, I should mess up this slide, but I think that's evidenced by that like thing we looked at earlier, the state of JS, where it's like a lot of the pros and a lot of the cons, and they kind of feel like they're kind of the same thing or the inverses of each other. And it's like, how is that possible? Well, there are so many variables. And when I was thinking about this, as I prepared for this talk, I just kind of started to think and read about all the different variables that come into play when you're choosing a programming language, right? Like, for some people, performance might be like the most important thing. For other people, like speed of development. For other people, maybe it's mentoring new developers and getting them up to speed, or hiring, or refactoring, or there's so many variables, right? Just like with human beings and deciding who's a better human, there's a lot of variables. And so that's the TLDR of this talk. It's very, very difficult to measure better, right? And you guys are like, Luke, this is obvious. I know this, right? And I think all of us do intuitively know it, but I think, especially as developers, it's important to remember because there is this thing that happens, especially in front end, in the front end community, where people get on the hype train and they get on it hard, and they think that it's going to be like a silver bullet. And MX actually, I'm going to use MX phrase. Can I do that? MX, they have a phrase that they say there's no silver bullets, there's just a lot of lead bullets. And I think that's a really good phrase to remember. Like, no one technology or one programming language is going to solve all of your problems. Everything, or a lot of things involve trade-offs and gray areas and whatnot. One interesting thing is that when I was doing this research, I linked to this right here. I'll pull it up. People have studied this before. People way smarter than me, way more programming experience than me, have studied this, trying to use like science, right? Not just like Twitter and Stack Overflow surveys, but actually being like, hey, how much does a statically typed language like Typescript help? And it's very, very difficult to measure. And if you scroll down here, there's a few different studies that they reference, and I kind of looked through them all, and some of them seem weird in terms of like their methodology. Like one of them, they measured the average time to people took to fix bugs, but it was in some like contrived code base, so all the response times were like under 100 seconds. It's like, I don't know who's fixing bugs in less than 100 seconds. That's pretty quick. But so yeah, if you want to kind of get into like the science of like the study of this, you can. But a lot of there isn't like one conclusive every study has said this thing, and that's exactly the case in my opinion about TypeScript versus JavaScript. There's not a like this is better and this is why. It's just trade-offs. I'm trying to think if one other thing I wanted to show. This is so Eric Elliott. He's somewhat active. He's opinionated. Whatever. This is a good article. He clearly has a bias, just like all of us, as he's writing this. But he tries to be at least somewhat, data-driven about it. And it's long. It's detailed. I read the whole thing. I'd recommend checking that out. The TypeScript tax, pretty cool. I think that's all I wanted to show, except for I have some GIFs to finish it off. So the TLDR, right? It's difficult to measure, which is better, but hopefully you guys are now kind of aware of that if you weren't before, and also you maybe have some idea of the benefits and the drawbacks. This is a deep topic, you guys. Like you can get way into. I just like barely scratched the surface on like the technical side of this, but it's deep, and I don't know a ton about it. But I've been getting more into it. So here's some GIFs. The point of these being that it's hard to measure. Cool. All right, that's my talk. Thanks, guys.